does the divorce case between Jocelyn Wade and Nathan Wade stand as of today?
As of today, we have a settlement, a consent order incorporating a settlement as to temporary alimony and temporary attorney's fees.
To somebody who's not an attorney, what does that mean?
So it's, in any case, it's not unusual for us to set up temporary financial arrangements in a case. What's unusual about this situation is that it's been over 2 years, and we're just now establishing a temporary financial arrangement, temporary support for my client who is not the earning spouse. So, and that's because of how this case has gone. But it's a normal part of the process. What's unusual is that it's taken this long.
You're a divorce attorney. How long have you worked in family law, in divorce law?
I've been in family law since 2003.
Have you ever handled a case quite like this one?
No. No. Well, as far as the facts go of the case, there's not a lot unusual about it. The circumstances surrounding the case, that's what makes it unusual.
Elaborate on that a little bit for me.
Well, when we started this case, when Joyce Wade hired me, we had no idea about any of the circumstances surrounding the case. We certainly had no idea that Nathan Wade had accepted a position as a special prosecutor. So from my perspective, I was approaching it like any other divorce case. I had a wife who'd been married for almost 25 years to a husband, a apparently successful attorney. So we were going to undergo discovery and all the things we normally do. And then as we started to peel back the onion and questions weren't answered and things didn't make sense, that's when it turned into something else.
You mentioned that when you came onto the case, it was your understanding that you didn't know that Mr. Wade was working as a special prosecutor.
Correct.
There have been people who've caught that. You mentioned it in some filings seeking additional discovery materials over the more than 2 years now that this case has been proceeding. And there have been folks who've wondered how that could be. So I just want to put it to you, why didn't you know that Mr. Wade was a special prosecutor until at least somewhat fairly far along in the process?
Well, I can tell you that to the extent that it was public knowledge, it wasn't in any public circle that I was a part of or that Joyce was a part of. And we did not actually learn that he was the special prosecutor until around the time that the indictments came out. And in discovery, we asked about sources of income with specificity, and the answer that we received repeatedly was Nathan J. Wade, PC. So we didn't have any information, objective information that would tell us anything about that until it became a source of public information. And that's when we started down the hole of trying to get information with regard to his income. Those were the things that weren't making sense. He didn't seem to have very much in the way of income, but he seemed to have a lot of money at his disposal. And when we learned this, that's when we started doing subpoenas to Fulton County and open records requests to figure out what on earth is going on.
You mentioned something that I want to kind of circle back on, the open records requests and the subpoena. I think the divorce case really got dragged into the national spotlight when you subpoenaed Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis to sit for a deposition in this case. And I want to spend a little bit of time talking about that. And let's start here. DA Willis tried to quash that subpoena. There was a hearing. The judge stayed the subpoena at the time. Before that hearing, DA Willis filed a motion in response trying to quash the subpoena. And she wrote that your client was using the legal process to harass and embarrass the district attorney. And I'm quoting here, she said in her filing that doing so was obstructing and interfering with an ongoing criminal prosecution. What did you make of that when you read it in her filing?
I was astounded that she would make that type of assertion against an individual, another member of the bar. I understand intellectually what she was trying to do, but I don't take too kindly to people threatening my clients or myself. And that's what it felt like to me. It went too far.
You took it as a threat of criminal prosecution.
Correct. That if we proceeded with this deposition, that we would be prosecuted criminally for it. That's how I took it.
Did you raise that concern in a response filing of your own? Did you ever hear a response from DA Willis about that? Let's talk about the subpoena specifically. You wrote in a motion, and this is where we have to peel back a little bit from the legalese as best we can, although, we'll hash it all out. But we want to be sort of as clear about all of this as we can, because there's a lot of motions and counter motions. And,
oh, yes.
And that's the nature of these things. But you wrote in one of your motions in support of the subpoena to get DA Willis to sit for that deposition. You wrote that you wanted to depose her to gather information about the nature of the relationship between DA Fani Willis and Nathan Wade. And in that filing, you wrote that it was your belief that the two of them were engaged in a romantic relationship.
Correct.
What kind of proof do you have to support the notion that Mr. Wade and DA Willis were engaged in a romantic relationship?
So let me say one thing about the subpoena. When we first issued the subpoena, we didn't list the reason for the deposition, and we did that on purpose. It was only after her filing that when she demanded to know why we were going to ask her questions, that we reissued the subpoena with that information on it. I just want that out there. But we received documents. Like I said, I did the, sorry, I'm jumping around. I did the open records request. This was late fall. And once I received those documents, I issued a formal subpoena for evidentiary reasons. And I received those in November. It was shortly, as soon as I received those, we filed a motion for a temporary hearing because I had information about money. I did not have information about a relationship at that point. And it wasn't until we received a handful of documents from Nathan Wade on the Friday before Christmas, December 22nd, that I had information that indicated with a reasonable degree of certainty that there was definitely more than a boss-employee relationship between the two of them.
When you say information, help me understand what that is. Because the natural question of anybody who watches this is going to be, okay, but what was it? So you say you obtained information. What information did you obtain? What proof did that show to you that there was a relationship between DA Willis and Mr. Wade?
I received documents that indicated, as you've seen, that they have traveled together, ostensibly not for business purposes. I can't think of a business reason for them to have gone to Aruba or to Napa Valley. And we've issued subpoenas as a result of those documents that we received from Mr. Wade that have gone further.
When you say gone further, the latest that I've seen in the public record so far are the exhibits attached to your response to the emergency motion seeking to quash the subpoena by DA Willis. There were purported credit card statements in there that showed some flights booked for both Mr. Wade and DA Willis. You say that you've obtained new information that goes further. Can you elaborate on that?
I don't know if I should at this point. Let me answer it this way and tell me what. We have issued subpoenas based on specific items contained in those documents, and we've received information back that gives more detail with regards to what we learned in those credit card statements.
Can I actually show you, and maybe you can help me understand the credit card statements better? I have them here. And sometimes I'm a visual learner sometimes.
Absolutely.
And one of the things that I noticed is that the credit card statements themselves show flights to San Francisco and Miami booked
right.
On behalf of passengers named Nathan J. Wade and Fani Willis. But you, in your filing and in our conversation here, have also mentioned trips to Aruba and other places. Can you point to where in these credit card statements those pieces of evidence come up?
I don't think that the Aruba trip is actually in these credit card statements. It was a part of the cruise that they went on, the Royal Caribbean cruise that's in here. They flew in and out of Miami, and from Miami they flew to Aruba.
Okay. And it's your belief that that was a romantic getaway?
Yes.
Did Jocelyn Wade have a sense that, I can take this back from you. Did Jocelyn Wade have a sense that this was happening?
She did not.
One of the things that some folks have asked about, and I want to make sure you have a chance to elaborate on it however you choose. There's a timing question. So the subpoena to DA Willis to testify in the ongoing divorce case came on January 8th of this year. On the same day, a defendant in the ongoing criminal case in Fulton County filed a motion to disqualify DA Willis, also alleging that DA Willis was engaged in a romantic relationship with Nathan Wade. So on the same day, two separate allegations of the same romantic relationship. There are those who've wondered whether you coordinated efforts with anybody who's seeking to disqualify DA Willis from the criminal case in Fulton County. To those people, what would you say?
I would say absolutely not. We didn't know about a potential romantic relationship between Nathan Wade and Fani Willis until immediately before Christmas. When we came back after the first of the year, we prepared and issued the subpoena. We were actually trying to serve her the week before, and we were not able to perfect service. We finally perfected service on the 8th, which I understand. I've learned since that, because this question has been asked of me, that apparently that was a deadline in the criminal case for filing motions. I had no idea about that. There certainly was no coordinated effort. What I can say is that adultery is not only a grounds for divorce in Georgia, but it's also a factor that the court considers in equitable division of property. So as soon as I received information indicating this potential relationship, I went after it. As for other people and the timing of when they did, what they were looking at, and where they got their information, I can't speak to that.
A total coincidence.
I don't generally believe in coincidences, but in this case, it literally happened on the same day.
How has this case impacted Jocelyn?
So Jocelyn she is an incredible woman. She's kind, she's sweet. She has some health issues that have gone untreated because she has not had access to resources to take care of herself. And needless to say, in the last few weeks, as all of this has gone on, it's taken a definite toll on her. She's definitely struggling.
I know the terms of the consent order have not been made public. Is Jocelyn satisfied with the current outcome of the case? And that's a strange phrasing to say current outcome, but this is not a final disposition.
Correct.
Is she satisfied with where things stand now?
I think that I can, without revealing any confidences, say that yes, she's very pleased with where things stand at the moment.
Can you share anything about the terms of the current agreement?
Beyond the fact that we established temporary support and that Mr. Wade is paying attorney's fees and litigation expenses, I can't.
Do you have a sense of when a final disposition will be reached in this case? It's been a 2-year-long process now.
Nathan Wade has a list of documents that he has to get to us. And after we receive those documents, we are going to try to mediate the case within 45 days. And if we are not successful, then we will proceed to the next phase of litigation.
I want to circle back to kind of where we started here. As you jogged something in my mind there when you mentioned kind of the 45-day time frame. Mm-hmm. As of this point, DA Fani Willis has not given sworn testimony in the divorce case, correct?
Correct.
The most current order on the matter is a stay from the judge in this case.
Yes.
Do you foresee a scenario in the future where you would renew your efforts to get the district attorney to testify?
I do foresee a scenario in which I would renew those efforts.
What would that look like? What would require you to get to that point?
So the next step, the judge wants to hear testimony from Nathan Wade. The next step, if the efforts in the next 45 days or so are not successful would be to depose Mr. Wade. And depending on the answers that I get in that deposition, I would then make a determination as to whether or not to proceed with revisiting the issue of the deposition of DA Willis.
You say depending on the answers you would get in that potential deposition, because again, if the 45-day mediation works out, there will be no need for that, correct?
Correct.
If you do get to a point where you pursue testimony from Mr. Wade, what information from his deposition would lead you to then seek more testimony from the district attorney?
Oh, I have a lot of questions for Mr. Wade about his relationship with DA Willis, and more specifically, how he has dissipated assets as a result of that relationship. That's very relevant to what we need to deal with in the divorce case. There's a reason that I subpoenaed DA Willis before taking or trying to take Nathan Wade's deposition. And the reason that I did it in the first place is the reason that I think I'll need to ultimately.
And what is that reason?
Nathan Wade has not been forthcoming in this case. And we have jumped through hoops of fire to obtain the most basic information from him. Sometimes he has been, in my view, outright deceptive. And other times he's just playing games with information. And I wanted to go to a source that I had a more reasonable belief might possibly tell the truth.
I want to end with two final questions for you. And I guess let's start with this one. Why, this is your first sit-down interview on this matter. I know you've spoken on the courthouse steps. I saw that interview. But this is the first time you're sitting down and having an extended conversation about this case. Why talk about it now?
I think that there's a lot of misunderstanding out there on many levels with regards to this case, what's gone on, what's going on now, what can be expected in the near future, even so far as there's a misunderstanding as to what the agreement yesterday was. And so it's important to me that the facts are clear and that the record is clear, not to talk in legalese.
And speaking of legalese, I want to circle back to sort of the core component here one more time, just so it's crystal clear where your perspective is, because it has been a complex case. It's a long case. It's a big docket. Even for folks who are in the profession, I think they would say that this is a complex matter with a lot to track. The biggest question that surrounded all of this has been proof, has been how do you prove these allegations? And these are serious allegations, that there is a romantic relationship between an elected official and somebody involved in both a long-term divorce case and a very high-profile prosecution. So I just want to put it to you one more time as clearly as possible. What proof do you have to support the allegation that DA Fani Willis and Nathan Wade had a romantic relationship?
I'm not trying to be slick. I have documentary evidence that suggests to me that they absolutely are engaging in a romantic relationship. And I wouldn't be pursuing this line of question, this avenue of investigation, if I wasn't reasonably certain of that fact.
I notice the tense you use there is are engaged. In your view, this is an ongoing, current relationship.
Yes.
I always say last question, but then something comes up. So I just want to.
We do it in court too.
I know. Well, you want to make sure. And it's important to us that you have every opportunity to respond to anything and everything.
Right.
It comes down to a fairness issue. And so you mentioned you wouldn't be pursuing this line of questioning if you weren't reasonably certain of this. There are those who have said that, why does this matter? It's tawdry, it's salacious. Why does this matter? Why does a potential relationship between these two matter to your case? To people who ask that question, what would you say?
I would say what we just discussed a moment ago, that adultery is not only a grounds for divorce in Georgia, It's also a factor for the judge to consider or the court to consider in equitably dividing assets. The fact that it's become salacious, it's always tawdry in every case. The fact that it's salacious, I think, is because of the specific people involved in this case, which obviously we have no control over. But we need to figure out what's going on, and really, probably even more importantly, figure out what portion of this estate has been lost as a result of this relationship. And that's where it really becomes relevant.
So it's about the money.
Well, at the end of the day, the judge said it. It's a math problem. And so ultimately, we are going to have to bring it down to numbers. But there are, there are factual issues to discuss. A 26-year marriage, a stay-at-home woman. She worked while he went through law school. The fact that he's having an affair and doing some of the things that he's done before and during this case is highly relevant. And we have to go into that.
You mentioned at times you felt that Nathan Wade was being deceptive, outright deceptive, I think was the language that you used in the efforts to obtain information from him. It seems particularly about financial information. Describe those deceptions. What are the concerns? What are you looking for, and what are you worried is being hidden?
So I'll give a couple of examples. It's all a matter of record. We issued a notice of deposition request for documents from Wade Bradley Campbell, and we received no response. Nathan Wade was the registered agent for Wade Bradley Campbell. No response. Wade Bradley Campbell was representing Nathan Wade in the beginning of this case, and they were the ones that were putting out these discovery responses that were completely barren of facts and information, basic information. The fact that we had to find out by watching the news, no offense, that what his current job was, it's ridiculous. And we learned it 2 years almost after this case had been going on because he wouldn't disclose it. He knew the information. He has a duty to seasonably supplement his discovery, and he just wouldn't do it. He kept producing the same handful of documents that he knew didn't tell us what we needed to know. And as far as questions, he's answered questions in a way that I do not believe are truthful.
Mr. Wade's been paid, according to public record, hundreds of thousands of dollars for his role as a special prosecutor in the ongoing criminal case against former President Trump and other co-defendants related to allegations of 2020 election interference. Mm-hmm. Are those payments at the core of what information you're seeking? And forgive me to be repetitive on this, but I want to make sure we drill down as much as possible into the core details here. And I don't want to put words in your mouth either, so I want to frame this carefully. But are those payments, are those payment records what you're seeking most of all?
That's a piece of it that we've been seeking. Payment records, tracking the money. They say always follow the money, and that's what we've been trying to do. Follow where it's been going and what accounts it's been going into and where it's ended up. And that has taken a fairly Herculean effort because there's a lot of inconsistency with what's happened with the money.
You feel that there's been an effort to hide how much he's been paid?
In this day and age, it's very difficult for people to hide money, given the technology that we have. But I do know that he has been putting money in places that it would seem to me that he is trying to shield it from discussion in our divorce.
Is there anything I missed that you think is important for people to understand about this case and about your role in it?
Honestly, I know that there are all these questions about coordinating and that sort of thing. I'm here to do a job for Joyce and to protect her. If there's anybody that deserves it, it's her. And we're not connected with the other case. We are seeking similar information about the same people.